Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I will be showing you how to make this bag. It's our new pattern, the Charlette Boxy Bag, and we have two closure methods. This is one. It opens up like this, and that is the bag. And the second one, okay, so the second one is also like it, but it's the same bag but different closure method. So it has this magnetic snap on the two edges and then a turn lock at the center. It's also the same thing inside the bag, so it closes like this. And in this video I'll be showing you how to make this method, which is the turn lock and the magnetic snap method. And the second method, this, I will link a video down below. Augusta has made a video on that and it shows how to make this closure method. And the bag has a lot of features. This is the base of the bag. It has this purse fit. The side has this connector to hold the long strap, and the side is made in such a way that has a frame panel. The side is actually joined to the frame panel, and on the inside of the bag it has two slip pockets, one on this end and the other one on the other side. And the interior of the bag is really spacious. As you can see, it looks like a small bag but it can take a whole lot. So guys, let's get right into it. On the main interfacing panel, draw a line 2.75 from the short edge, then 4.5 inch from that line, then 3.5 inch from the last line, then again 4.5 inch from the last line, and then it should be remaining 2.75 inch. Now if it's more than that, you can trim it off at this point. Then you fold it on those lines and then label the line according to how it's shown in the pattern, because the line has to be upper flap, back, base of the bag, the front and the lower flap. Then now we take the main panel and then draw a line 3/4 inch on all the edges. And then we're going to fuse the main interfacing to this main panel. I'm using glue, but you don't have to use glue. You can use your DST, your double-sided tape, or you can as well fuse it to it if your interfacing has if it's a fusible interfacing, you can fuse it to your main panel. Now we're going to fold the edges of the main panel to meet the edge of the interfacing. Now note that we are not folding it on the interfacing. The edge of the main panel is not going to be on the interfacing at all, and the reason is that we don't want the interfacing to be inside our seam allowance, so that it will be very easy to sew. So at the edges, it's going to poke a bit up. Just note the way I am folding the edges. So I'm folding the straight edges first, then the corners will poke a bit like that. Then I will cut it later with my scissors. So this is ready, and now we move to the second step where we prepare the lining. So first we take one inner flap panel and draw 3/4 inch line from all the edges, or from the long edge, from one long edge and the two short edges, like this. Then I'm going to apply my glue. Like I said before, you do not have to use glue. You can use your double-sided tape, and then you can also fuse it if you're using a fusible interfacing. So I'm going to fold the edge of the inner flap panel to meet the edge of the interfacing, the same way I did with the main panel. I do not want the interfacing to also be in the seam allowance, so that when we are sewing later, it will be very easy to sew. And then again, I'll cut the edges that pokes up a bit. Now I have my inner flap panel. Because there are two, I have to repeat it for the second one. Now moving on, we'll move to the lining panel, and I'm going to set my interfacing on the center, the lining interfacing. I'm going to center it. I'm going to center it on the lining panel. It has to be at the center place. But for this lining panel, I'm going to be folding my lining panel. I'm going to fold it on the interfacing, and it's not going to be out of the seam allowance or anything. The reason is that the lining will not be in the final seam, so it's nothing to worry about. You can see I'm folding it at the very edge of it. So the bits you're folding over it might seem too much, but don't worry about that. Fold it all the way over it on the long edges alone. We are not folding it over on the short edges, only on the long edges. So then the lining panel is prepared. Then we are going to sew it to the flap lining. So first we notch the center on the short edges of the lining. Now we'll notch the centers. Then we are also going to notch the center of the raw edge on the inner flap panel, the raw edge. And after notching, we're going to hold those together, right sides together. It has to be right sides together. Then we pin it in place. So I'm going to also hold the second one, because we are repeating the same thing for the other short edge of the lining and the other inner flap panel. And at this point, the inner flap panel is going to be a little bigger than the lining. There's a reason for that, and we are getting to it in the later steps. So I'll take this to my sewing machine and then sew them right sides together with a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Now remember, I'm repeating the same thing for the two sides, so I will repeat the same thing for the other side. And then I'm going to open the seam and top stitch. The seam will be towards the lining. Then I will top stitch like that with 1/8-inch seam allowance.
So at this point, our lining panel will look like this, and we'll repeat the same thing for the other side. So now our lining panel is done, and then we'll move to the third step, which is the slip pocket panel. So now we take the slip pocket panel, hold it right sides together. We'll hold the short edges right sides together, and then we'll sew the sides with 1 4-inch seam allowance. I'm sewing the two together because we have two slip pockets. So I'm sewing the two together, as you can see in the video. And at this point, I'm going to turn it to the right side. First, I will notch the bottom edge a bit so that it will be easy to poke out when I get to that point. So yeah, you can see it's very easy to poke out at this point. You can also press it with your pressing iron. And I'm going to take my slip pocket trim and then use it to cover the raw edge of the slip pocket. And the way I am doing this, I want the one side to be longer. That's on the width. I want one side to be longer than the other side, so that when I'm sewing, I can catch the part at the back. And I'm going to sew with 1/8 inch seam allowance from the raw edge of the slip pocket trim. Then I'll cut the excess away from the sides. And also on that back, on the back of the slip pocket trim is going to be excess. Remember, we want one side to be larger than the other one, so I trim that off as well. Then I'll prepare the same thing for the second slip pocket trim, and then I will sew both of them to the lining panel. Now it has to be I'm going to set my slip pocket at 0.5 inch or ½ inch from the seam, and then at the center it has to be centered. That's why I first mark the center of the lining and the center of the slip pocket. Then I'm going to sew that down with 1/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to sew down one side through the bottom and up the other side. Then I'll repeat the same thing for the second slip pocket. Now we are done with the two slip pockets, and then we'll move to the fourth step where we have the handle panel. So first I'm going to draw a 3/8 inch line on the two short edges of each handle panel, and I'm also going to draw a line down the center of the long edge. We have two handle panels, so I'm repeating it for the second one. Okay, I'm going to use my glue and I will not allow it to get to that 3/8 inch line at the short edges. Also, if you are using your double-sided tape, it shouldn't get to that 3/8 inch line because we will need to sew that part together. So I'm going to fold them to meet at the center. That is the long edges. I'm folding the long edges to meet at the center. So at this point, those 3/8 inch at the edges, I'm going to use clip to hold them right sides together, and then I will do the same thing for the other two short edges. So now we have this, and then I'm going to sew on those 3/8 inch line, and then I will cut the edges in a bit as I'm doing now. And I'm using my glue again to fold open the seam. I'm going to open the seam. Now I'm going to fold the same parts towards the center as well. Then I'll straighten it like that and use my clip to hold it together. Make sure the seam is 3/4 inch from the edge, from the short edge of the handle panel, because we want it to be even. So I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and then sew on all edges with 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now I want to sew my handle panel to the main panel, and on the upper flap, remember we label it at the beginning, so I'm putting my handle panel on the upper flap part of the main panel. So I'm going to measure 1.5 inch from the top edge and then 1/2 inch from the side edge. Then I will center my handle panel on that mark. Then I will do the same thing for the other side and also center the other short edge of my handle panel on the mark as shown. Then you can use clip to hold it together, but right now I'm using super glue to hold it together. Then I will take this to my sewing machine and then sew a 3/4 inch box to hold the handle down. So I'm sewing from the short edge, then on the long edge 3/4 inch, then through the other short edge, then 3/4 inch on the other long edge, like that, to form a 3/4 inch box stitches to hold the handle down in place. Then I will repeat the same thing for the other short edge of the handle panel. And then we are done with that now, and we move to the 5th step, which is the front petals or front petals decoration. So I'm going to put the big petals right side up, then the medium petal right side up on top, then the small petals right side up on top of it. So we have 3 of them together. Then I'll repeat the same thing for the second set. I'm using power glue to hold it all together, but you can use your double-sided tape to hold it together too, because we only need it to stay together for a while till we use rivet to hold everything together. So make a mark on your main panel as you deem fit. You can place it anywhere on the main panel, but on the front of the main panel, not just anywhere. It has to be the front of the main panel. Again, I'm using super glue to hold it to the front of the main panel, but you can also use your double-sided tape. Then I'll take my rivet press, and I'm going to make a hole at the very center of the small petal. Then I'm going to use rivet to hold it together. So now I'm going to use rivet to press the rivet. I'm going to use rivet press to press the rivet down to hold it firmly in place. Now we move to the 6th step, which is the bag log, the magnetic snap, and the purse fit. So we're going to be installing all our remaining hardware at this point. And then I'll take the flap panel and make a mark 3" from one side edge, then ½ inch from the top edge on the flap panel. Then I'm going to install the 2 male magnetic snap on each of these marks. And this particular inner flap panel I'm installing the male magnetic snap on will become the upper flap, which is, the inner flap. Now it will become the upper, and the second one automatically becomes the lower flap. And you have to note that, because there's a reason for that on the final assembling of the bag. Now we are done with that. Then we are going for the lower flap, which is on the main panel. Now going to measure 2.25 inch from the top on the lower flap of the main panel, and then 3.75 inch from the side. Then we're going to repeat the same thing for the two sides, and then we'll install the female magnetic snap on those marks. And of course, it is centered on those marks. Okay, so at the center of the female magnetic snap, I'm going to install my male lock. So now we have that, and then we're moving on to install our purse fit. And the purse fit is installed at 1.5 inch from the side edge, and then 1 inch from the line of the base, right? 1.5 inch from the side edge and 1 inch from the line of the base. Then we install all our purse fits on those 4 lines, on those 4 marks. So after installing all your purse fits, then if you're going for the second lock option, this is where you have to start that. And the video for that is not in this video because we've chosen the first option. I'm linking a video down below to see how to make the other lock option. Step 7, side panel. So take your frame panel and then fold it right sides together. You can hold it with clip, and then you sew on the 2 short edges and on the long edge. So you repeat the same thing for the 2 frame panels. And then now take your side connector and draw a line down the center of the long edge. Then fold the 2 sides to meet that center line using your double-sided tape or your glue. So then we do the same thing for the second one, and then we set that aside for now. Now we take our side panel, and then I'm going to draw a 3/4 inch line on one short edge, and then 3/8 inch line on the 2 long edge. Then I'm going to apply glue or use double-sided tape or fuse the interfacing within those lines. To insert my connector panel, I'm going to measure 1.5 inch from the top of the side panel, and then I will cut a 3/4 inch slit on that line and centered. I'm going to take my cutter and use to cut that line. It has to be 3/4 inch. Then I'll install one connector panel. It has to be right side up and of course towards the top of the side panel. So I'm going to sew as shown and then insert my D-ring. Then the other raw edge will go inside the slit as well. Then I'll use my rivet to hold it in place at 1/2 inch from the seam. And of course centered, it has to be centered too. So there we have it. And I'm going to take my lining panel and then sew this short edge, the top edge now, with 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to open the seam and then top stitch that with 1/8 inch seam allowance. At this point, I'll take my side frame panel and then clip it right sides together with the raw edges of the side panel. So a tip I use for that, so that one is not longer or shorter than one, is to start matching the short edges together, or the bottom to or the center together, then match the short edges as well, and then the sides in between. You can see the bottom together and then the side in between. So it should leave a little bit on the pointed edge of the side panel, but that will not really matter. It won't affect anything. So you can see it leaves a tiny little bit on those corners. Then now we're going to sew that. I'm going to sew that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So after sewing together, I'm going to take my taping and prepare it as I will be using it to cover the raw edge of the the side frame panel and the side panel. I'm going to fold it to the center and press, then fold it again so that it doesn't have raw edge. It is advised that the taping should be a very soft material, probably a 𝐼𝐞𝐚𝐭𝐮 cotton or something of that nature, something that is very soft. So then I will sew it around the raw edge of the side panel with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then because I'm using a frame material for my lining, I folded for my taping, I folded the raw edge in, then I'm still going to sew them all together. And then I will repeat the same thing for the other side panel and the other side frame panel. Now we move to step 8, assemble the bag. Then I'm going to take my main panel and the main lining and align them wrong sides together. You can use glue, you can use double-sided tape to hold them together. Make sure that the upper flap goes to the upper flap lining. That is the upper flap, the part that has the handle, has to go to the part of the lining that has the male magnetic snap. Okay, then the bag is going to be like this. And then I'll take it to the sewing machine and sew my lining to the main panel, because the lining will not get to the edge of the main panel when we are sewing the sides together, and we want them to sit together. So I'm going to sew the lining to the main panel, and of course I will do this for the two edges, for the two long edges of the lining panel. I'm going to take one side edge and then clip it to the main panel. Then I will also clip the other side edge, or the other side panel. Now I'll clip the other side panel because I want to sew everything all together, from the side panel to the lower flap to the upper flap. I'm sewing all at once. So we're going to sew everything all at once. So when you get here, it can be a little tricky if you do not have a free arm machine or a cylinder arm. All you have to do is place it on your sewing machine as I am doing, and then go really slowly. It can take a bit of time, but it is totally doable. Okay, so now we install the female lock. And then to install the female lock, we're going to use the already installed male lock to know where to install it. And the reason why I will not give an exact measurement for this is that there are different kinds of lock, and if I am giving you measurement, it will be based on my own, which is not what you're using. So when you get to this point, use your already installed male lock to know where to install your female lock. So our bag is almost done. At this point, you can already see the beauty of your bag. And after this point, we can close it, admire our bag, you know, and then we move to the last step, which is the long strap. So take your long strap and then fold the long edges towards the center, because you're going to draw a center line down the long edge. And then you fold the long edges to meet that center line. You can use glue, you can use your double-sided tape to do this. Now fold the long edges in half again and use clip to hold them in place. Then you take this to the sewing machine and sew around all edges of the long strap with 1/8 seam allowance. Then now you install your slider. Okay, then slide on one swivel hook. Then also thread the raw edge of the strap as I am doing in the video. Okay, then use river to hold the raw edge, the short edge together. And then for the other short edge, slide on the second slider and then also use river to hold it together in place. Okay, now your strap is all done. Then install the swivel hook onto the D-ring on the bag. You can adjust the slider to the size you want, and yes, your Charlette Boxy bag is all done.